We plant, we plant, we plant the food. We drive the cab. We load the ship. We run the lab. We build the bridges. We fly the plane. We do the work. This is our day. We do the work. Boom, boom. We do the work. Boom, boom. We do the work. This is our day. We type the page. We clean the streets. We sew the clothes. We change the sheets. We sell the goods, yes we do. We lay the stone, we do the work. This is our home. We do the work. 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 This is our home.
Good afternoon. Welcome. You are listening to the Labor Forum here on WRFG 89.3 FM. I hope you enjoyed the programs before this one with the great music that Red Carpet Shelley provided. My name's Diane Mathewitz. I'm a retired auto worker and a member of UAW Local 10. I want to welcome Paul McLennan, who's seated next to me. He's with the Amalgamated Transit Workers as a MARTA mechanic. And we are so pleased. This is actually the first labor forum that I know of that actually is being broadcast on Labor Day. That's because of the change in our schedule from Tuesdays and Wednesdays to Mondays from 4 to 5. The song that always starts the program off is by John Fromer, We Do the Work. And it's a great song for this show. The opinions that are expressed on the Labor Forum, though, are those not necessarily that of the Board of Directors, staff, or volunteers here at WRFG. So because this is our first Labor Day program that Paul and I have done together, we've prepared an especially informative program for you today, and we'll get right at it. Before I do that, I want to say hi to Christopher, who's our engineer, and of course to Gary Washington, who is recovering from surgery, and he was the founding Teamster member who put the Labor Forum on starting in 1986. So we're going to do our two segments that we begin the program with, and then we'll have our call-in interviews today. So the first thing we do on the Labor Forum is we've established what we're calling labor headlines. And I'm opening this segment today with some news that has escaped the attention of the media in Atlanta, and that is the case of 12 black residents of Brooks County. And this is down near Valdosta on the Florida border. And Lula Smart, who works as a store clerk in Quitman, the county seat of Brooks County, is going to go back to court starting tomorrow for her third trial on 32 felony voting fraud charges. Her previous two trials resulted in mistrials when the jury could not agree on a verdict. She, along with several others from the underrepresented black community in Brooks County, worked to elect 3 women to the Brooks County School Board. They took note of the state's rule change in 2010 about criteria for voting by absentee ballot that now requires that you don't have to have a specific reason why you want to vote absentee. So they brought this information to seniors and disabled people without transportation, workers whose job schedules had prevented them from getting to the polls on time, and just others who previously had not voted. And their candidates won, replacing 3 white men who had maintained power in the county for years. One of those losing candidates, the county's assistant district attorney, filed a voting fraud complaint, and the GBI brought in dozens of agents, armed I should say, to investigate, repeatedly coming to people's homes and places of work to question them about their vote. In 2012, Governor Nathan Deal ordered the 3 women removed from the school board. They ran again in the next election and won again. But meanwhile, the charges against 11 people, one of the defendants has since died, linger. And Lula Smart is going through still another trial, now going to be into its 3rd week. All because the majority black population used their right to vote to bring about needed change in South Georgia. This case is known as the Quitman 10, and you, if you're interested in more details, you can just do a Google search and you'll find out some of the amazing, really poor so-called evidence that the state keeps bringing up as they continue to prosecute these mostly women. The second thing is, here on the Labor Forum, we strive to debunk misinformation that is repeated endlessly by corporate media and anti-worker commentators and public figures. And one of those falsehoods is that U.S. workers are not competitive, that we don't work hard enough, or that we just expect higher pay, much more than we deserve. All of this constant denigration is designed to convince U.S. workers to accept whatever the boss gives them, be thankful that you have a job, and just plain shut up. So it's instructive when the Gallup poll on work and education comes out with its findings each August that we pay attention to the facts, and the numbers are startling. We've had many programs with fast food workers, and we're going to have one again today, who often have 2, 3, even 4 jobs because this industry prefers part-time employees at 15 to 20 hours a week. But here's what the Gallup poll reveals about the average work week for adults over the age of 18 who are considered full-time. And that is that the average work week is now 47 hours a week, and that 18% of full-time workers average 60+ hours a week. The 40-hour week is the standard used in government programs for overtime rules and a whole variety of other things, but only 42% of so-called full-time workers actually work an 8-hour day or a 40-hour week. 59% of workers who are salaried or called independent contractors never just work 40 hours a week. A whopping 50% of them work 50 hours or more. And according to the Gallup poll, this has been the norm for the last 14 years. To add to the realities of workers' lives in the U.S., the average productivity per worker has increased 400% since 1950. American workers work 137 hours more a year than our Japanese counterparts, 260 more hours than a British worker, and get this, 499 more hours than the average French worker. This is in part because these countries have mandatory paid vacations of at least 20 days a year, mandatory paid vacations of at least 20 days a year, plus holidays. The U.S. has no such required paid vacation time for workers, something that is negotiated in union contracts, but not part of many workers' lives, who, even if they could get the time off from their boss, can't afford to lose the pay. So on this Labor Day, we honor those whose many forms of work keep society functioning, providing the goods and services used every day. We especially acknowledge all those who are working today, from nurses and hospital workers to bus drivers, servers and cooks in restaurants, store clerks who are taking care of customers at all the big Labor Day sales, firefighters, and all emergency personnel keeping people safe as people enjoy social gatherings in backyards and at beaches, and so many more whose valuable work is marginalized and underpaid. And with that, we wish all of our listeners a Labor Day of struggle and resistance and moving forward. So, Paul, what have you got for us on this week in labor history? I know we're going to be right in tune again.
Well, in terms of the 8-hour day, it's very relevant to talking about the history of Labor Day. This is a holiday celebrated on the first Monday every September to honor the achievements of workers and the contributions the labor movement has made in this country. It was first celebrated in New York in 1882. In 1887, Oregon became the first state to establish Labor Day as a holiday, which put it on the first Saturday in June. By the time it became a federal holiday in 1894, 30 states officially celebrated Labor Day. President Grover Cleveland signed the legislation making this a federal holiday in response to labor unrest and as part of an election year concession to organize labor. The previous year, workers at the Pullman Company had gone on strike. Pullman, Illinois was a company town founded in 1880 by George Pullman, president of the Railroad Sleeping Car Company. Its residents all worked for the company, their paychecks drawn from the Pullman Bank, and their rent, set by Pullman, deducted automatically from their weekly paychecks. But in 1893, the Pullman Company was caught in the nationwide economic depression. Orders for railroad sleeping cars declined, and hundreds of employees were laid off. Those who remained endured wage cuts, even while rents in Pullman remained consistent. Take-home paychecks plummeted, and so the employees walked out, demanding lower rents and higher pay. The American Railway Union, led by a young socialist, Eugene V. Debs, came to the cause of the striking workers, and railroad workers across the nation boycotted trains carrying Pullman cars. The strike instantly became a national issue. Railroad traffic in much of the country was paralyzed. President Grover Cleveland, faced with nervous railroad executives and interrupted mail trains, declared the strike a federal crime and deployed 12,000 troops to break the strike. Violence erupted, and 2 men were killed when U.S. deputy marshals fired on protesting workers in Kensington, near Chicago, but the strike would be broken. On August 3, 1894, it was declared over. President Cleveland signed the recognition of Labor Day into law a mere 6 days after the end of the strike. The September date, originally chosen by unions in New York City, was selected rather than the more widespread International Workers' Day on May 1st, because Cleveland was concerned that observance of May 1st would be associated with the emerging radical, anarchist, and socialist movements that, though separate from one another, had rallied to commemorate the Haymarket Massacre on May 1st. The Haymarket Massacre was the aftermath of a bombing that took place at a labor demonstration on May 4th, 1886, at Haymarket Square in Chicago. It began as a peaceful rally in support of workers striking for an 8-hour day, and in reaction to the killing of several workers by the police the previous day. An unknown person threw a dynamite bomb at police as they acted to disperse the public meeting. The bomb blast and ensuing gunfire resulted in the deaths of 7 police officers and at least 4 civilians. Scores of others were wounded. 8 anarchists were arrested and convicted of murder, though only 3 were even present at Haymarket, and those 3 were in full view of all when the bombing occurred. The jury in their trial was comprised of business leaders in a gross mockery of justice. These 8 organizers were convicted, not for their actions, of which all were innocent, but for their political and social beliefs. On November 11, 1887, after many failed appeals, 4 of the leaders were hung. The remaining organizers were pardoned 6 years later by Illinois Governor Altgeld, who publicly criticized the judge on a travesty of justice. In 1889, over 400 delegates met in Paris on the 100th anniversary of the French Revolution at the International Socialist Congress. The Congress passed a resolution calling for an international demonstration to campaign for an 8-hour day in memory of the Haymarket Massacre. May 1st, 1890 was the date chosen. The call was a resounding success. Although the 1889 resolution called for a one-time demonstration on May 1st, the day quickly became an annual event. Throughout the world, workers in more countries marked the celebration of workers' rights on May Day. Ironically, while May Day is celebrated as a public holiday throughout most countries, it is not in this country, and its history and connection to the struggle of workers here is not well known. While we celebrate Labor Day today, and all the achievements that unions and the labor movement have made in this country, we should also be aware of how the rest of the world honors workers on May 1st.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's an interesting history, obviously. I was curious whether, in fact, Labor Day is marked by, big parades, big marches, raising issues of workers' rights around the country. And I know from my own experience growing up in Minnesota that the main form of Labor Day was a picnic. And that's true here in Atlanta. I know there are some cities where unions do actually have a march where the contingents of all the unions come out. But it's a different kind of a vibe, I guess we could say. So we'll go on to our next segment, and we have Joel Solow on the telephone. And what we want to talk about in this next couple of minutes, Joel is with Atlanta Raise Up, and we have had many of the fast food workers here in the metro area who have gone out on strike, who have picketed, who have leafleted, all in an attempt to raise the minimum wage from the lousy $7.25, many of them are paid, to at least a minimally living wage of $15 an hour, and of course the right to join a union. So Joel, welcome to the Labor Forum here on Labor Day.
Thanks, Diane. Glad to be here.
So we asked you to come on because there have been multiple nationally organized events as well as local organizing campaigns that are going on. And we just wanted an update from Atlanta Raise Up as to what's coming up.
Sure. Well, we'll be rallying this upcoming Thursday and joining thousands of workers all over the country. And I mean, some of the most recent updates are that within the last month, workers came together in Chicago for the first nationwide fast food workers convention, over 1,300 workers. And we had Reverend Barber there, we had Keith Ellison there, who just introduced legislation along with Representative John Lewis to make organizing, union organizing, a civil right. They were there, and at that convention, workers dedicated themselves and devoted themselves to doing whatever it takes to win $15 an hour and the right to form a union. And I should say that, whatever it takes, I mean, there are going to be cities and municipalities and states that pass living wages for all workers across the board, but our workers are also directing a lot of their grievances at the companies that they know really are the boss and the folks behind the lousy conditions and lousy pay that they work under. And so, we're not waiting for states and municipalities. We're going straight to the source, and that's the big fast food corporations that certainly have enough to pay our workers better.
Right. So we had a program when the NLRB ruled that McDonald's could be considered an employer of record along with the franchise owners. Could you talk about the significance, again, exactly what that means? Because this is a very common kind of way now for businesses. There can be this huge corporation, but then it franchises, whether it's fast food or a variety of things, and then they say that they don't have any responsibility for the low wages. Could you talk about why that's not so?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think there are a lot of ways of kind of getting complicated into the weeds of how this is going to play out. But at the end of the day, what the labor board recognized and what our workers have known all along is that it means that, in this case in particular, it means that McDonald's is the boss. I mean, we have franchise owners that rent buildings from McDonald's. Much of their business plan is, set by McDonald's in advance, and so, they hide behind these franchisees and say, we have no control over the wages, but they seem to have control over basically every other business practice, which kind of sets the franchisees with very little wiggle room to move and kind of set prices independently. And so we actually just saw in California as well a law that kind of tightened big corporate responsibility for the conditions that franchisees are working under, and try to give franchisees a little bit more independence within those corporate structures and contracts. Because at the end of the day, I mean, they are setting the terms that dictate the way the franchises can run their businesses and the way that our workers live their lives.
So, Joel, obviously there's been movement across the country. As you said, city councils that have passed higher minimum wage. Seattle is one in point. I think there's going to be a referendum or something that's happening in Los Angeles. There's a number of other cities where, as you said, people are not waiting for the federal government to raise the minimum wage. They are working on it either corporation by corporation or locality by locality. Could you talk, is there any kind of sense of doing something like that here and in the Atlanta area or in Georgia?
I can't speak for everybody else. I think there would be a lot of interest in that kind of a fight. I think it's a matter of thinking about what the timeline is and what power we really have to build. Those referendums and those moves towards 15 didn't come just because they were good ideas and because it had a lot of popular support. But I mean, there was movement and coalition and alliances that had been built up over many, many years that really pushed those folks to raise to 15. And I mean, in Seattle, there's enough of a movement that there was, the mayor and then much of business and a lot of the labor unions were going for 15 over 3 years. And, there's enough of a movement and a left flank in Seattle that there's a very strong 15 now contingent that's basically saying, we need this immediately. And so I think that there would be a lot of interest in Atlanta. I think from most folks that I've talked to, there'd be interest in that sort of thing. I think it's just a matter of figuring out where we're at and what fights are, what fights lead up to that. And so, I mean, for now, participating in the national campaign, our workers are joining other workers and really calling for corporations that, again, have the power to do this immediately. I mean, they could raise the wages and figure out their business models, and that's within their power to do.
Joe, thanks for joining us. I had a question. In every union organizing situation, we find workers who are courageous enough to stand up and take on the company and become involved in an organizing drive. Can you describe some of the people that you've met or that you're working with that are playing a leading role in this campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have, I think a lot of folks have met Antoine, who works at Long John Silver's and has really stepped up and raised his voice in his workplace to such a degree that I think there were things that he won for himself in his workplace that he didn't even realize at the time were not things that were guaranteed to him by labor law, because I think as everybody who's listening to this show will know, labor law is really insufficient to the needs of most workers. And so he was actually powerfully surprised to learn that with the way his shifts are construed, he wasn't naturally entitled to a lunch break. He got a lunch break because he won it, and because he fought for it, and because he stood up and demanded it. I think Amber and Joshua and Armando and a lot of the folks in Burger King have just showed tremendous courage in not only speaking out and being very public voices for their conditions. Armando, for instance, who was working at Burger King for 6 years and has only received a 10-cent raise to $7.35 in that time. been working in fast food for much longer than that. But he wrote a solicitation or a request to the Georgia NAACP asking that they join with other NAACP chapters across the country at their national convention and endorse the fast food campaign, which they did. And so folks are showing leadership, they're organizing other members in their shops, and it's, I can say that it's just been really, really amazing and powerful to see how they've grown in their sense of leadership and their sense of understanding of the bonds between them and other workers. At Solidarity City in North Carolina in particular, there were a lot of folks who were meeting, farm workers and UFCW workers at the Smithfield plant for the first time and beginning to realize, this is not just us, this is not just fast food, but farm workers, meat packers, everybody in the entire food chain is working under these circumstances. But, understanding that the leadership role that they've been able to play in really lifting up a lot of these issues in the popular consciousness, and at the national convention, Mary Kay Henry, the president of SEIU International, really called them out in a good way and said, these referendums that are happening that are benefiting not just fast food workers, but all workers are coming because of your leadership. And so it's been really powerful to see them kind of see themselves and their roles and the work that they do in fast food in a new and, I think, much more dignified light than the industry would necessarily treat them.
Joel, we're almost up for the time for this little segment with you. Could you give some information about exactly what's going to happen and how people can support fast food workers on Thursday?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so first I would say for everybody, social media is an excellent way of staying involved, and there's an ATL Raise Up Facebook page and Twitter, which is just @ATL Raise Up. Jobs with Justice also should be carrying a lot of that information on their Facebook and Twitter, and so that you can just search on Facebook Atlanta Jobs with Justice, and then their Twitter is @AtlantaJWJ. But this Thursday we're going to have an early morning rally at 6 a.m., and that address is 386 North Avenue. And then the next location is going to be at noon, but we're telling folks to get there at 11:30 because, stuff happens. And so we're encouraging folks to join the rally, which is going to be at the corner of Boulevard and Ponce de Leon, or they can meet at the corner of Ponce de Leon and Kennesaw, which is a little bit closer, just a block away, but closer to the rally location. And that's again at noon this Thursday, September 4th.
Thank you so much for coming on the air today, Joel, and obviously next year's Labor Day will be full of victories, I am sure, for these fast food workers and many others who are definitely on the move all around the country.
Yep. Thanks, Diane.
Take care. And so I believe Sumer is on the phone. Is that right? Super. All right. This is going to be so great for everybody here to hear the news straight from one of the home care health workers in Minnesota who just achieved an astounding, important victory for, again, workers who go into people's homes and assist with many of the needs of people who are ill, have disabilities, etc. And so Sumer, folks, you're going to be hearing Sumer Spika, who is calling in from, I believe, St. Paul, Minnesota. Hi, Sumer.
Hello.
Thank you so much for carving out a little bit of your time today to talk with us here in Atlanta. And, of course, this program is actually heard around the country and, in fact, around the world. And so we are just so happy that we're going to be able to share this good news with workers everywhere about what you and your fellow workers have achieved. So could we start off by just learning a little bit about you, like how long you've been a home care worker? Yeah, let's start with that.
Sure. Again, my name is Sumer, and I have been a home care worker for, it'll be 6 years in February. I take care of a young girl named Jayla. She has a genetic disorder called Opitz syndrome, which causes many different. She has many different issues. She has some issues with toileting and eating, just normal everyday things that she needs help with. She's also deaf, so I have had to learn sign language to communicate with her. Yeah, I mean, like I said, my daily things with her are just activities of daily living, which is what most home care workers provide for their clients, is help with those activities of daily living, which are just, again, things that you and I do every day that we take for granted that these clients need help with on a daily basis.
Can I ask you, how is it that the client and you get together? How does that work?
Well, it can work a lot of different ways. In my situation, the little girl that I take care of, her mom and I were friends, and her dad was passed away very unexpectedly, and so she was left to care for this little girl with special needs by herself, and she just needed some help, and so she came to me. I had worked in the healthcare industry for many years, and I was a new stay-at-home mom, and she said, I could really use some help. Do you think you could help me out a little bit? And so I started out, just very part-time, and now it has become a full-time job over the last 6 years. So sometimes it's people who contact an agency and say, I need PCA care, and the agency will help assign a PCA for them. It can work several different ways.
Well, I guess that kind of leads me into you and your co-workers achieved something that maybe a lot of people just didn't think was possible, and that was that you voted to form a union. So could you talk a little bit about that? It just happened last week. Wow.
Yes, Tuesday last week was the count and our win. Well, first I started on the campaign about two and a half years ago, and the first thing we had to accomplish is that we had to pass a bill through our legislature that said we had the right to form a union. We did not have that right as home care workers to do that, so we had to go lobby at the Capitol, talk to our legislator, testify in the hundreds of hearings, and we did get that bill passed, and so that gave us the right to form a union. Then,
can I interrupt there a second? Is it because you're not covered under the National Labor Relations Act? Is that why you had to get special legislation?
I honestly don't know all the details about that. All I know is that we did not have the right to form a union, and so we had to pass a law that said, yes, we can form a union. So that was our first obstacle. We overcame that, and then our next obstacle is that there is over 26,000 home care workers in Minnesota, and it's a very isolated job. We go into people's homes to care for them. It's not like we go to a hospital or a clinic or, somewhere where we all sit in a lunchroom and we can talk and talk about our struggles. It's a very isolated job. So we had to reach all of these home care workers, let them know that, first of all, you're not the only one struggling with this. You're not the only one working a full-time job and still having to rely on government assistance. There's thousands of us, and so we had to go all over Minnesota and let people know, hey, we're going to have an election. And so we did that. We had to get 9,000 cards signed from home care workers saying that they would support us forming a union in order to trigger our union election. So we did that over the winter. It was a very cold winter, but we did it. We got over 9,000 cards signed, and in, I believe it was June or July, we took those cards to our Bureau of Mediation Services, and they counted them all, and that triggered the election. So over the last month, they have been sending out mail ballots to all the home care workers that qualified to vote, and on Tuesday last week, they had all of those ballots, about over 5,000. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. I'm sorry, but over 5,000 people voted, and 60% of those people voted yes to form our union.
Okay, okay. So you described a little bit about how, as a home care worker, for the most part, people are in an individual home. There might be a rotating group of people if they provide 24-hour care, but in general, it's a very singular kind of job. So can I ask you about some of the conditions that home care workers suffer? What is it that propelled people to, and you in particular, to devote so much time and incredible energy? What motivated you to do that? What are the issues?
Well, I started off, it was very selfish reasons. I wanted to be able to work a full-time job and be able to provide for my family without having to rely on government assistance. I work 40 hours a week. I still rely on the county for health insurance and sometimes food stamps to put food on the table for my family. I have a family of 5. It'll be 6 here in a couple months. And so, that was my first motivating reason. And then, as I started working on this campaign, I started hearing stories of thousands of other people that are struggling with the same struggle. I started hearing stories of clients that have huge turnover from their PCAs because their PCAs can go work at McDonald's or Burger King or anywhere else, and make more money than they're making working as a home care worker. I met one woman who is an older woman in her late 70s, early 80s, and she had her own daycare business, a very profitable business, and her adult son, has multiple sclerosis, and he got very sick, and he's bedbound and wheelchair bound now, and she gave up that business to keep him home and out of a nursing home, and she's struggling to pay her bills. She's retired, she lives off Social Security and the small amount of money that she gets from working as a home care worker, and it's just not enough for her. And she also, she says all the time, I don't know how long I'm going to be around. I'm not going to be here forever, and I want to know that the home care worker coming into my home after me is going to take good care of him. The training is none. There's little to no training. Again, I've been a home care worker for 6 years. I've never had CPR training. I have never had first aid training. And, those are things that we should know. Another woman that I started working on this campaign with has a daughter who was in a wheelchair, and she was being transferred from her wheelchair to her bed, or from her bed to her wheelchair, one or the other, and her PCA didn't know how to properly transfer her, and somehow during the transfer, the way that she transferred her blocked her airway and she couldn't breathe. And luckily she had enough in her to point to her CPAP machine, and the PCA understood what she was saying, got the CPAP machine onto her face, and it was able to force some air into her lungs and start her breathing again. But had she have not known, or they were not able to communicate that to one another, she could have died. She would have died. And her PCA should have the proper training to know how to transfer her appropriately. So that's a huge obstacle. And, and benefits. I have no sick time. I have no vacation time. I had a baby 2 years ago, and I had to go back to work 1 week after having a C-section. I got home from the hospital, I was home for 2 days, and then back to work. And it shouldn't be that way. So those are just, some of the obstacles that we face. And those things just need to change. Nobody should have to go to work sick and put their client at risk. Nobody should have to. Another woman that works in our campaign had a hysterectomy, and the next day she was back to work. Nobody should have to do that. That's just not something, it's just not right. So, those are just a few of the things, but, the big things that need to change and why I feel this is just so important.
Sumer, could you describe the average, just to give us a picture of who is a home care worker in Minnesota? This number of people that you were, the 26,000, are they mostly women? Are they young? Are they different nationalities? What's the demographics or the range of people doing this kind of work?
I think that a huge majority of home care workers are women. I think a majority are minority women. I mean, it's anybody there's, you know, a lot of different people that are home care workers. A lot of them are family members. You know, my situation, I'm not a family member, but a lot of them are family members, and the majority are women and minority women.
So where does who pays the low pay? Does it come from Medicare or Medicaid?
Yeah, it comes, yep, from, I believe it's Medicaid, and it's through the state. The state, we're employed through an agency. The agency is reimbursed by the state, and the agency, all that they do is give us our paychecks and do like the taxes. Otherwise, the money comes from the state, and the agency decides how much of that reimbursement from the state goes to the PCA.
All right, so when you do this contract now, because you've won an election, and so now comes negotiating a contract.
Yeah.
And that the contract will include things such as, you know, how much you get paid an hour, and what kind, do you have breaks, and a whole variety of things. So who are you negotiating with?
We will be negotiating with the state of Minnesota.
Okay, so the deal will be that you will have a uniform situation for home health care workers who are paid by, as you said, by the state through Medicaid. And so that will be that the agencies then are required to pay you X dollars an hour and provide the benefits. Is that how it's going to work?
You know, we're still, you know, at the very beginning of that process. I'm not sure exactly how it will work, and we will be talking about these things in the coming weeks. We want to get in and start bargaining as soon as possible with these people so that we can start making these changes. Again, we've been talking with home care workers across the state about what kind of changes they want to see. We will continue those conversations so that when we go to the bargaining table, we're bargaining for the things that the home care workers need the most first, not the things that, you know, SEIU thinks they may need.
Okay. Let me ask you if you could just hang on for a minute. We're going to do a short break here on the radio station. And when we come back, I want to talk to you about your impressions or your feeling about how this victory in Minnesota has impacted other workers in Minnesota and then others across the country. Okay, so that's the question when we come back.
Saturday, September 13th, WRFG is hosting a fall community yard sale where you're sure to find fabulous items at fantastic prices. There will be a wide array of goods for your home, music and book collections, jewelry, clothing, art, and more. The sale will take place at the Little Five Points Center for Arts and Community, 1083 Austin Avenue Northeast, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. and will benefit your community radio station, WRFG 89.3 FM. To reserve a space to sell your own treasures, please call the WRFG office at 404-523-3471. Be sure to stop by on Saturday, September 13th at the WRFG Community Yard Sale and see what fabulous finds you can take home. WRFG air shifters will be on hand to help you with your purchases. What a great way to support your community radio station. That's Saturday, September 13th, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the corner of Euclid and Austin in Little Five Points.
It's that special time of year again. Time to celebrate with your extended blues family at the 29th Annual WRFG Labor Day Blues Barbecue. Join us for an afternoon of great music on the patio at the Park Tavern, overlooking beautiful Piedmont Park. As always, it's on Labor Day, Monday, September 1st. This year's lineup includes Tinsley Ellis as our honoree, Southern Soul vocalist Willie Hill, blues supergroup Uncle Sugar, the Barry Richmond Band featuring Jeff Robinson, and the Forrest McDonald Band with vocalist Andrew Black. Doors open at 12:30 and the music fires up at 1 p.m. The Park Tavern is at the corner of 10th and Monroe Drive. Tickets are $20 at the door and $15 for advanced tickets from the WRFG website at wrfg.org. Kids under 12 are free. Barbecue by Fat Matt's Rib Shack will be available for purchase. All proceeds benefit Atlanta's only community radio station, WRFG Atlanta, 89.3 FM. See you on Labor Day.
I just want to let you all know that there's still plenty of time to get down to the Blues Barbecue, and I'll be going right after the program is over, because there'll be a couple more hours of great music and then, of course, an opportunity to help support WRFG that brings you the Labor Forum, among many other great programs. So we're back with Sumer Spika, who's with the successful organizing drive that took place in Minnesota. A tremendous amount of work you all did to win a union election among home health care workers. So before we went to the break, I asked you to think about how this has impacted other low-wage workers in Minnesota, and if you have some idea of whether you're getting calls from around the country, people wanting to know how you did it.
Well, my hope is that it inspires anybody and everybody who wants to fight for change to do so. When we started this campaign, it seemed not impossible, but it seemed like it was going to be a really long, tough road, and it was. But we did it. We've overcame multiple obstacles, and in the end, we won. And again, my hope is that it inspires anybody and everybody who wants to make changes for the better to do so. We certainly have been trying to support some organizations around Minnesota that are fast food workers and airport workers. We've been trying to work together to make some changes there as well, and my hope is that this inspires them, that if we can do it, they can do it.
Sumer, I had a question about, as you go into negotiations, I'm sure you're going to be looking for support from the community in general, but also from the people you serve. And one of the things that we've learned here in terms of the public sector unions is that building that bridge between people who provide a service and the people who receive it. Could you talk a little about how winning this union and negotiating fair wages and benefits and working conditions will actually make things better for the people you serve?
Yeah, we have several people on our leadership team of this campaign that are recipients, our clients, and for them, this means hopefully, again, having people come into their home and be reliable. The turnover rate, we have one couple on our leadership team who are both people with disabilities. They have a young daughter, and I have seen them, I've known them for a little over 2 years. I can't tell you, at least 10 home care workers. I mean, it's just, and it's hard for them. They get somebody that they can, that they get to know each other, they know the ins and outs of what needs to be done, and then, the person doesn't show up for work because when you're only making $9 an hour, it's not that motivating to go to work, or they find a job elsewhere where they're making $12 an hour and they can work half the time and make the same amount of money. So, definitely it will change the lives of these recipients immensely. I personally, my husband has multiple sclerosis, and just in the last month or so has became permanently disabled. And I've been saying, we never know what tomorrow brings, and it is a very real possibility that in my near future I will need a PCA to come into my home to help with my husband's care, not because I can't do it, but because it's a lot of work for me and I need a break. I have 3 young kids, another one on the way, and I want to know that the person coming into my home is paid well, is well taken care of, has the training that they need, so that I can depend on them and rely on them to do the things that need to be done for my husband. So, it definitely will have a positive impact on people receiving care.
And the thing that's so important to the disability rights movement, that the work that you're doing makes it possible for people to live independently, and to do that well, and to have a stable workforce makes all the difference in their lives, I can see.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to be able to live with dignity. I mean, even we've talked about people being in group homes, and how even in those situations they don't even have a key to their own home. They have to be home at a certain time at night, and just to be able to have a key to your own home and to come and go as you please. Those are, everyday, again, it's everyday things that you and I would take for granted, that this, having a PCA, having a home care worker in your home to help you, enables you to have those everyday things that most people just take for granted. So absolutely.
Because if you weren't there, people would end up in institutions.
Exactly.
Summer, I wanted to ask one more question, though. I mean, Minnesota is considered a liberal state. Here, we're in Georgia, and it's a right-to-work state and a very difficult environment. It's a hostile environment. When you talked about that you got legislation passed through the Minnesota Assembly or legislature saying it was okay, that it was legal for you to form a union, I find it almost, it'd be really, we're not talking about a struggle, we're talking about a humongous struggle to get something like that passed in Georgia. But nevertheless, it's what you said. It's encouraging to know that you had obstacles, but nevertheless you were able to overcome them. And I'm wondering again whether or not you know whether your organizing committee, your members, are being contacted by others around the country who do the same work as you, who have in fact been inspired and are now asking you for advice how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I'm not I wouldn't be the one that they contact, so I can't say for sure.
Maybe after this program they will.
Yeah, maybe. I definitely know that we had a phone call with the president of SEIU a couple days ago, and the president of SEIU Healthcare Minnesota said, if we are wanting to pay it forward, we're wanting to help. If there's other states that are wanting to form home care unions, we are happy to go there and do whatever we need to do to help. So definitely, and I think that one of the things that was so, I've said this a couple times in a couple interviews, but it's...
Hello?
Oh.
Oh, no. I think we just lost Summer, and so she's calling right back. Stay tuned, everybody. We're about to hear what Summer is going to say that she's said in multiple interviews. We love cell phones, but they do go out. Okay, Summer, what were you about to tell us?
I'm so sorry. I was saying that one of the most important things about this campaign is that our foundation of this campaign has been the personal stories of home care workers, not what our government says, not what SEIU says. It's the real life stories of home care workers, and it's been home care workers making the decisions every step of the way, and it will continue to be that way with this process when it comes to how much our dues are, when it comes to bargaining. It's home care workers that are making these choices, and I think that that is just so important to have that foundation, so that, when it comes back to somebody saying, well, that's, they're just pawns for the governor, or they're just, it's about government, it's about you, it's not. What this is about is home care workers, and home care workers wanting to be able to provide better lives for their families, and more importantly, wanting to provide better lives for their clients. And that's the bottom line.
And just to say here on the labor forum, it is about the right of workers to both have a voice, a determining voice, not just, be at the table and take whatever somebody else says at the table, but to actually be the ones who, you do the work. That's the song that we start this program off is by a guy by the name of John Fromer, and he has a song, We Do the Work. And that is what we talk about here, and we want the people who do the work to get the true benefit of their work, and more than that, to be totally respected for the work they do. And so we want to thank you so very much for being on the program today. And unless Paul might have one more question.
I just had a question, Sumer, about the agency. Looking at things from the point of view of human rights and healthcare being a human right, and workers' rights being a human right, I'm curious about the agency. Is this a private sector for-profit company that the state contracts out to?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
So there could be a variety of ways.
I don't know how to answer that. So I don't want us to give you the wrong answer. So I'm not sure about that. I know that the agencies, I believe that they're private, but I'm not sure.
I think there's a variety of ways. I think there probably are some nonprofits. There are probably a variety of different kinds of agencies, but I guess the bottom line is that the money is funneled from the state, and that is why you're going to negotiate with the state, because they can set the rules.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
Okay.
All right, so I want to thank you again on behalf of myself and Paul and Chris, who've enjoyed immensely hearing about your victory today. So critical that we have victories on Labor Day, because there's so many negative things that are happening to workers, not just here in Georgia and around the country, but around the world, who are facing cutbacks and low wages and dangerous working conditions and foreclosures and all of the rest. So we're so happy for you.
Thank you,
Thank you very much.
All right, take care, and we'll look forward to talking to you once you've negotiated your contract and we can hear about how that went.
Sounds great. Thank you. Have a great day.
Take care. Bye-bye. Okay, listeners, so we are about to conclude our first Labor Forum on Labor Day. I hope you learned some valuable information and have been inspired both by the fast food workers, who are going to be doing another nationally coordinated action this Thursday, September 4th. And of course, we'll keep up with the workers in Minnesota, the home care workers. And of course, do go ahead and take a look at what's happening in Brooks County in Quitman, Georgia. As I said, a very important case for the issue of voter rights and the ability of, in so many places, for there still to be intense voter suppression. This is Diane Mathewitz saying goodbye for today.
We will not bow down to racism. Yeah. We will not bow down to injustice. We will not bow down to exploitation. What you gonna do? I'm gonna stand.